Hey, friends, welcome back. And I definitely should not have played that intro because this show, not for kids, folks, not. This is John's Comics without the kids. This is John's Comics After Dark. This is John's Comics Off the Rails. Welcome back to another Beards and Bourbon show. This has been a series of live streams reviewing and enjoying the work of Sarah J. Maas from the perspective of some knucklehead jamokes, and we've been having a really great time. We've gone all the way through the Court of Thorn and Roses because tonight is the most recent, not final, novel in that series. We've also been doing the Throne of Glass, and I keep saying we because I mean me and this guy.
What is up, buddy? How's it going?
I'm glad you're feeling a little better. I know that we were go no go for launch there a couple times.
I was a game time decision tonight. And listen, if I dip out at some point, that just means I hit the wall of trying to stay awake. But yeah, the bug has gotten through our household, and it's been cutting us.
I'm glad you're on the mend, or at least a little better than you had been.
And
I'm looking forward because I'm seeing you in 1 week. In fact, 1 week from tomorrow.
Like I'll be in Portland a couple days before you to get it all warmed up for you. So
that's good. Okay, good. Yeah, very excited for that. But yes, this has been the Court of Thorn and Roses crew, and that means we got one other guy that we roped in on this. We got Justin. Wait, oh crap, wrong book. Justin, wrong book.
Oh, we're doing Silver Samurai, right? Tonight?
Absolutely not. Not X-Men tonight. Not X-Men. No New Mutants.
Absolutely not.
Although Greg is appearing on a future episode.
Oh, yes, he is. Yes, he is. Can't wait.
I hope it's a good one. You guys always like, let's put him on an annual book because
we just throw Greg in somewhere.
And it's like Storm and like some like slave woman clothes fighting like some Superior army, and I'm just like, what is going on?
You're like, I don't know what any of these people are.
You should like X-Men. It's great.
Yeah. We're trying to prove the reason why you shouldn't read it, right? It's this is poor Greg, the DC indie guy, is being dragged kicking and screaming through the mutant universe.
Can't
Justin,
wait. I'm
good
ready
to see
go.
you.
Likewise.
Thanks for coming back around and keeping up. The pace has been grueling, but you've caught up. You're completely with us now.
I'm there. Well, not into the other books, but yes, as far
no.
But
one series at a time.
Yes.
One at a time.
Exactly.
This is done, so now you can get into the new series.
That's right.
All said. But tonight we also have an even more special guest than the two of you guys. We're bringing in not only the first woman to help bring some other perspectives to this program, but also dancer, cosplayer, X-Men aficionado, part of the XWife podcast. We've got Alicia.
Hello,
Alicia.
I'm so incredibly honored to be a part of this group. Thank you for having me.
I mean, just looking at your background, you've already brought more to this program than anybody else who's ever been on it. So,
okay.
I mean, yeah, you've got gear.
That's what I'm talking about.
Nesta's here. I have my
elevated
grade.
the show. Yeah,
I'm ready. I almost wore my Fae ears, but I was like, Alicia, calm down. Pump the brakes.
I appreciate the dedication.
Oh, so it's a good thing I left the bat wings.
Right?
Yeah, because otherwise this would be a very different show.
Okay.
I promised Greg at some point we're going to get those Bat Bros mugs at some point.
We got to get them.
Need those
get the Bat Bros.
I keep getting the Instagram ads, guys. I keep getting the ads.
There you go.
That's how I bought this. Sucker.
See? I get it.
Yep.
So all the links for all these fabulous people are in the description for the video. You can find them all across social media, all across whatever place where you do your podcasts or wherever you watch your videos or whatever you go on Instagram. You can find all these awesome folks. We've also got a playlist for all the Beards and Bourbon. If you want to go back like Alicia did and like cram some of the knowledge that I'll put air quotes, knowledge that we dropped in this series, you can absolutely do that.
I binged y'all just like I binged the books.
Love it.
I'm sorry.
Good enough.
The books were a lot better, I guarantee you.
No, it was great. It was very interesting to hear the differing perspectives. I was like right along with you on some points, and then other points I was like, "Are you guys for real? What? What do you mean?"
Then maybe we'll start with a little precursor after we let's say hellos to the people in the chat.
Yeah.
We got Ruben Guzman, the White Tiger, in the chat. What's going on, Ruben? Good to see you, Ruby. Derek is in the chat early. He's dropping emojis. Good to see you, sir.
Nice.
JP is not yet caught up on this particular book. He is, I think he's read the original trilogy and then he has not done Frost and Starlight.
Okay.
JP, I appreciate you at least stopping in.
Solid.
I know he's catching up. He's getting there. And he is, and I think he's done Throne of Glass as well. So he's done
and he's starting book 2.
Whoa.
Crown of Night. Okay.
Can you do that? Can you read? You can read a little bit of one when you're still in this one.
Pace yourself. I mean, pace yourself.
Some people can.
Brother John, we're not talking about your hair. We're not. We could be, but we're not. The silver flame. There he is. No good in the chat. What's going on? No?
Yeah.
CGC is in the chat. What's going on, CGC Song Too Crazy? Good to see you, sir. Been a hot minute. Chedai Knight is here. This is not an X-Men talk, but you're welcome to still hang out with us, Chet. Kenneth Bird. What's going on, Kenneth? Good to see you, sir. Yes, Sheena. I dropped the link for the show in our chat that I believe Inja, and this is an After Dark show, so I'm going to say it. The chat that we lovingly call Fuck Faerie is I dropped a link in there so everyone in that chat can catch the show. Yes, Inja, shout out to Inja Binja, not a Faerie fan, but then she has not gotten too
great
deep
group
yet.
chat.
I just have to tell you that I have a group chat with my friends that's titled Resan's Horse. So
there you go. So you got both sides of the spectrum going on there.
Good. It's good.
John, I feel like we got to step up our group chat name then. It's just a court of like,
yeah, I called ours ACOTAR Book 5. It was not very kind of bland.
I'm like, gosh, I want to join a new group chat.
I'm going to leave it to Greg to rename that. He'll We got one half of the Books with Bethany crew here. DJ Wise is stopping in to say hello, and he's heading back to work.
Hey.
Thank you for coming by. JP says, so I am not going to stay. Yeah, don't spoil yourself. He's starting book 2 for Throne of Glass tomorrow. There you go.
Nice.
Wow.
And there's Paul. Speaking of our Throne of Glass homie, Paul, he is in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. How's Florida Gulf Coast treating you? And we got Bethany, the other half of DJ Wise's crew. Good to see you, Bethany. Hopefully, I got to connect with you on the Bat Boys, Bat Bros, some kind of tumblers for this crew here. So remind me. Yes, Alicia is elevating the program already. Adding someone with intelligent perspective. Well, all right, fine.
Listen, y'all had good things to say. Y'all have good things to say.
Jacqueline, good to see you. Welcome to the chat. Big O says he made the mistake of reading Crescent City 3 before ACOTAR 5. Okay, there's a lot to juggle there, and I haven't even started Crescent City, so that's
because of the Mossverse. You know, you gotta be careful.
Subtle interconnections. I hear.
Let me write this down. Hold on.
Crescent City 3, as I've been told, I haven't gotten to Crescent City yet, has like actual character crossover.
A definitive,
like that is a for real crossover moment. Yeah.
But you're good, Justin, because you've read ACOTAR 5, so that's what we're talking about tonight. You're good. You're all good. You didn't mess up. I didn't realize Reese had a horse. Haha, Reese's horse. I get it. I think that's funny. But Chet says, I figured I'd check you guys out before I go celebrate his birthday. Yes, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Hope you're having a good night. Yes, Alicia has invaded us tonight. And actually, I wanted to start off, Alicia, with you and just kind of get a sense of your thoughts. You've now read this whole series up to date. You've watched some of what we've talked about up to date as far as characters we're enjoying or thoughts we're feeling, predictions that we failed to make. Can you give us some highlights for you, kind of where your mindset was going into this book?
Yeah. So I had been sort of dipping into book talk for a little while. And so then I was pulled into the series as a whole and just like really excited to dig into it. And I had been at a lunch with a friend and we were talking. And so we're like, let's do a mini book club. And we just all started reading. 3 of us started reading them together. And I read all 5 books in like just under 2 months, which I know there are people who have read them in like a week, but I like Wings and Ruin I read in 4 days. I didn't do like anything other than like come home and read my book. So I was really excited, but I do have to say that it's sort of a dangerous game when you start, if you're like a TikTok person and you get into the ACOTAR world of book talk, because I unfortunately had almost every major plot point of Silver Flames spoiled for me. And
Oh.
I was so upset.
Yeah.
Like something would happen and I would be like, dang, oh, dang. But
Yeah.
Dang.
The
I was
memes
really
were too
excited.
everywhere. The videos and the
Yeah. And it's like because people make like AI things and you like are watching a scene happen before you really realize what you're seeing. And then you're like, oh my God.
Oh yeah, I see
no.
that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So, but I was really excited to get into this one because I was really interested in like a shift in perspective of the stories, you know, and it's not written from like a character point of view. So I thought that
Right.
that was interesting too, and just like ready to get into Nesta's story specifically because she's very interesting to me as a character. I think
Sure.
like personally, I relate more to Feyre. Like I see myself more as a Feyre, but I think that there's a lot about Nesta and her like warrior self that I find really cool, and like, you know, all the things that she does in this book are just insanely amazing. So yeah.
Yes. Oh,
I was
absolutely.
excited to get into it, but I'm like addicted now. I've already started Throne of Glass. Like my friends and I text each other as we're reading Throne of Glass, like any possible thing we think could be in a Mossverse connection. We're like, that tiny speck of dirt could be something. Like,
Are you just on the first books right now, or
so I've done Throne of Glass, and last night I finished Crown of Midnight, and I'm
Okay.
gonna do Assassin's Blade next because that's what I was told publication order was.
See, this is
But-
where you get Greg shaking his head.
I
'cause
know,
he's
I
like,
know,
Wait,
we-
I was told, and I'm
I
following
know,
this, and
I know.
I followed
I'm
Sheena.
listening to what the author of the books says to
But
go.
that's what I like. The article that I have says, according to Sarah J. Maas, this is how you read them.
Go
Oh,
to
yeah,
Sarah,
take
no,
the source.
Sarah J. Moss's website says the other one first.
I listen. I will believe you, but I
Here's
have
the
to go
problem
in the
too.
same
Those
order as my friends.
each of the little like books inside of Assassin's Blade weren't published, so they were scattered in publishing as well. So whether you look at it when the first one came out or when the complete collected edition came out with all of them, like I don't know how that complicates stuff.
Yeah. But I'm like, I'm fully in it. I'm gonna like get through Throne of Glass, and then I'm gonna go Crescent City, and then you're gonna see me, and I'm gonna be like, you know, the Charlie Day meme where he's like,
Yeah.
that's me already. So this whole room is just gonna be strings. And
Lots
I'm gonna
of
be
that
like,
string.
I understand how it's all connected. And I'll probably be wrong on like 80% of it, but it's fine.
That's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of
Paul
wrong,
says he reads them chronologically, which means he starts with Assassin's Blade and then runs through.
see
I
that.
mean, he's just crazy. He's out there.
but speaking of wrong, Alicia, you said you kind of binged on all our stuff. What's one of the most wrong takes that John has had so far in this series?
Okay, no, I have to call all three of you out on one thing that literally shook me to my core. It was when you were talking about Wings and Ruin, which of all of the books is my personal favorite. And we got to the part where you were talking about Rhys dying. And all of you were like, yeah, whatever. I knew he wasn't dead. No big deal. Didn't care. And like you had this whole conversation about like the trope of bringing him back, the same as Feyre. And I was literally like, okay, I just need you guys to know that I was sobbing. Like the moment I read the line, like Rhys is dead, I was like ugly crying, like put the book down, hyperventilating, sobbing. I literally, if you go to my Instagram or my TikTok, I have a compilation video from my reactions. And I was like literally like, no guys, this can't be true. So the 3 pages where they were like doing the process, I was like, I don't care what you have to do. Just please bring him back. Like I can't take this. And so the way that the 3 of you were just like, I mean, I knew he wasn't dead. Like, it's fine. I was like, are you guys for real? Because I was torn apart. After he came back to life, I literally put my book down and just cried for 5 straight minutes and was like, okay, Alicia, it's okay. He is fine. It is okay. This is a book. This is a book.
You talk
need
yourself
to move
down
on with your life. Like you're gonna be okay. So I was pretty in shock that I was like, that is a very different.
I will say what I do notice is books, reading something is harder for me to get emotional about something reading, but watching I'm watching High School Musical with my daughters because we're sick the other day, and I'm tearing up because Troy's getting with Gabrielle, and I'm like, you got it. Like, yeah, you guys are like, yeah, let's go. But like if I read it for whatever reason, like it doesn't do as much to me. But
could it also be like comic book characters are
I was
always
just-
dying and coming back to life. So
I was just gonna say
that.
That's what you
I don't-
said, right? That's the argument you gave. And I was like, I don't care. You're heartless people. Like, you're heartless. But I think that, like, you know, there were parts like y'all were talking about getting teary when like the dad came back, and I was like, yes, me too. I was also crying. So there were definitely things we related on. But in that moment, I was just in utter shock. And also, this is so annoying and such a pet peeve, but like every time you called winter solstice Christmas, I was like, you guys, it's not Christmas, it's winter solstice, it's a solstice party. The solstice came before Christmas. Stop it. And like I was just like, okay, you got to tell them how stupidly annoyed you were by that, because like I get why you called it Christmas, right? But I was just like,
we weren't Wiccan. We're not being Wiccan enough.
yeah, you take it from me, okay? The witches were mad.
I mean,
I love it.
They were boss. They were badass. They
Yeah,
were like,
but
you know,
no, but I
God-tier.
really enjoyed listening to you all. It was really cool to like hear what you had to say, to relating it to other things, and just like your perspectives are great. So that's why I'm so happy to be here and like have this
And
conversation.
as far my last question, I'm going to go around the horn and finish with Alicia. Like, gentlemen, as we went into this book, obviously the sisters, we all had feelings and thoughts about these three sisters and where we ranked them and how we felt about them. Can you, like, starting with Greg, how you ranked them going into this book and maybe how you rank them coming out of the book? Where are you at with these three sisters as far as just characters that you're enjoying, not necessarily as like who you're
So
looking to hook up with?
before I got into the book or after this book, where are they ranking?
Both. Yeah, before you went in and then after you came out, and if or are they the same, you know, whatever.
Well, let's just tick off Alicia right off the bat.
There you go.
No,
we can all be friends.
So
Yeah.
Faye slipped in this book for me. Faye has always been up there, top one, and then it was Nesta, and I'm even blanking on the third.
Elaine, who cares?
Elaine. They just haven't given, but they haven't given Elaine. They haven't given her.
Anybody who ranks Elaine above the other two at any point, I have serious reservations about. So, but like, I'm not sorry, not to judge.
I mean, we're gonna judge if any of you do, but you know, I think going out of this book though, I became more Nesta after this book. I liked her development as a character. I'm invested now into this story, into her arc more of like, okay, where are we going to go from this? You know, I'm okay now with the Reese Cup and Faye being like background characters in this now. And their decision making in this book bothered me again. That I started to see that in the third, the book, the Winter Solstice book, and you know, and then the third one as well. There starts to be like, man, y'all need to just go to couples counseling sometime. Just have a therapist talk to you about communication. Like, a lot of your problems would be solved if you just have an open line of communication, and you'd be in a healthier relationship, and you can still have all your Faerie Smut sex and be fun with it. But like, just talk too. Like, that helps. And I think some decisions that Faye made and Reese Cup made this book bothered me a lot more than they have in other ones. And Nessa overcoming her trauma, overcoming her own struggles to, you know, like, that is a strong character for me, and a strong female character of like, I'm like, yes. There are traits where I'm like, I want my girls growing up to have traits like this. There's a lot of traits that she has where I go, I don't want you guys to have these traits either. Like, so I'm not, but she took this. I think she's taking the lead on me for right now. I liked it.
Exciting to know. Okay, cool. Justin, what about you? How was it beforehand and coming out of this book? Did you have any changes? What were your thoughts?
So I love Elaine, and I think I think out of the three, she's definitely third for sure. Elaine is definitely third.
I mean,
I just want to start with that. I'm similar to Greg here. I think I do wonder for myself at least if this is like, if there's any recency bias of where I was like reading this and the memories I have of this book compared to the others, because quite frankly, it's been a long time for me to like recollect all these different things. And even for tonight, I like, you guys might carry me a little bit on this. Some of this, I just went back, by the way, and listened to like the last 20 chapters, and there were definitely like several moments where I was like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh wow, that did happen. Yeah, so definitely refresher just in general. But yeah, so to what Greg was saying, I think that just the character building for what Nesta, what we saw in Nesta was like fully. I loved like just seeing all of that development, and I feel like just seeing the other I don't know, maybe it was just because we saw this other perspective of Pharaoh that we weren't getting the I don't know, like the behind the scenes or the emotional thoughts of her, you know, all the time.
Right.
That maybe that's what did it, and that really isn't like fair to say then. But I don't know, just yeah, that's why I say the recency bias thing. I feel like that could be a part of it, but I mean, regardless. And I think just Nesta, just the way that she developed. I mean, clearly, like how opposite she was and how difficult, you know, she was, or how she was viewed as, and all the trouble she had kind of created. So from that to how she comes out in the end, like is really a turn. So, yeah, Nesta at this point for sure.
All right, nice to see that. What Jeff, the Cantonese comic kid, is in the chat. What's going on, Jeff? And Sheena does, I know, have a ton of Nesta love going in her life, and obviously,
yes, as she should.
She's going to be hardcore on this topic as well. Yeah. What about you, Alicia? Coming out of the other 4 and then into this one, does anything shift for you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I went into it's so funny because I started my cosplay journey, my ACOTAR cosplay journey. The costume that I have most recently posted, in my mind, that was Faerie. Like I was Faerie. And then I had people saying to me, like my friend Jilly was like, I knew you would cosplay Nesta. And I was like, oh, I was Faerie, but okay. And then I was like Faerie in her leathers, but that's fine. And then I read this. So Faerie was like, obviously top tier, then Nesta, then Elaine. Like Elaine, I love you, girl, but like say something. Your shining moment is killing the King of Highburn. I need more of that. So but I left this book and I was like, Nesta is it. Like, I already know, like, this is in process. I know where my bog is. I have a photo shoot planned. Like, I'm ready to go. I just think that, like, there's so much about her character and, like, not only her ability to grow in her own personal journey, but for her to be able to take that into Gwen and, oh my God.
Is it Elise or...
please don't come for me, anyone, but I just forgot her name. The Illyrian, the
Elise.
female. Is it her name? Yes. Probably I was saying it wrong in my head, if I'm being honest. But anyway, the Valkyrie transition, like to take what she was feeling and help them through what they were going through, and like just be more than just about herself. I felt like was such an important journey for her as a character, and I like left this being like, yeah, I love Nesta. I can't wait to see what she's going to do. I'm so interested in like how she's going.
Seriously,
how
holy
she's
cow!
Gonna, like, take her new, because she already had a new situation where she was like figuring out her powers from the cauldron, and then by the end of the book, when she gives that up and she like softens a little bit, you think like, okay, now what is going to happen next for her? I agree. I feel like Faerie and Rhys had their journey, and now like I'm okay for them to still be part of the family and the crew, but to not be the forefront of the story, because there's so much more to explore.
Yeah.
You know?
Well said.
Is it Emery?
Yeah.
Emery?
That's
Emery
it. Thank you. Emery. Yeah.
Inja Binja is in the chat. What's going on, Inja? Good to see you. Thank you for coming by. Yeah, we won't spoil it right this second. You can definitely duck out and catch back up later. I think I'm with all of you. Nesta was a character that I think we mentioned a few times that obviously had an annoyance, but always felt like there's more to this. There's more to be revealed. There's more that's going to happen. And so in that way, I was fine with the like slow burn for her character. And I do feel like eventually we'll get something akin to this for Elaine, and maybe it'll remove her from the cellar. But for right now, I'm fine. She's easily the basement, and there's no.
I can't wait for the 8th book to come out, and John's like team Elaine through and through.
Yeah,
and
right. All of a sudden,
like top sister, everyone else.
He's like,
got an Elaine tattoo, like
yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm renaming my kids. Yeah,
you are now Elaine,
and you're Elaine too.
Yeah, see, it all can happen that way. But so let's start with Nesta then, because obviously, clearly, the focus of this book is her, right? This is a book that's about her trauma. We've seen it through the last couple of books. the roller coaster that she's going through from, losing all their money and being human all the way through to becoming Fae, becoming part of the cauldron in many ways, watching her dad die in front of her, all of these things. So this book picks up with her basically being forced by all of her friends and family into rehab, into a forced dry spell, and she gets isolated. She gets forced to do like training and exercise, forced to like have a job in the library, all these things. And so like a big topic in this book is her journey, her mental health journey, and all these facets that are kind of part of her recovery, I guess you could say. So I guess my question for some of you to talk about is how did you relate to it, or where did you connect to this process for her? Because I think it is incredibly relatable no matter where you're at, right? So Greg, for you, when you're thinking about what Nesta's going through, where did you click into what she was dealing with?
I mean, it didn't seem like much of a punishment, right? Like, get to work in a library, get good training, physical training every day. You are locked in a castle with
more than once a day.
Like, you're locked in a castle with someone that
you want to bang constantly,
and then you don't have to deal with anyone else. Like, it seems like it's not as bad.
It seems like the house makes food and cleans it up for you.
You get to read all you want, and like, it seems like. But I mean,
so you're saying sign you up for this process at some point,
right? Like, yes, fine. I mean, but in all honesty, I think it shows the growth of like what she has to go through, right? And like it's a process of what she's trying to deal with and how she's going about it with the different steps of, like her struggle of being in the castle of, was it the Castle of Wind or the House of Wind?
House of Wind,
yeah. And like you can't go anywhere unless you are going down the longest set of stairs ever invented by mankind. Like, step aside, Rocky. This is the new like tormentuous, tormentuous staircase, and
I felt like you should have just grabbed a mattress and slid down it at some point. Just ride it.
Well, she did do some riding, John.
If she had to go up, I would understand. Like, up sounds a lot worse.
God, I don't even know where I was going now with that.
I was just talking about her, where you clicked into her recovery and what it was about, that where you related to her process.
Well, I think what they did a really good job, what Sarah J. Maas did a really good job of with the recovery is it wasn't a 2-chapter recovery. Like it wasn't like a quick and I don't think it's fully done even. I think there's value to that in real life too. Like your recovery is always ongoing. You can obviously make steps and strides in the right direction. And I think it's a process, and it's, but it also is that realization that as much as people can want it for you, you have to want it yourself ultimately. And for her to figure that out kind of like, and to get that phases, I think it doesn't give false hope, but someone's like, if you're trying to figure out, because I know I have friends that are, going through this and dealing with this type of stuff with people that they love and care about, and they want them to, but you can't force it on them. And Feifei and Reese Cup try that a little bit too much sometimes. And I was like, oh, you guys.
Yeah. And we had seen her, them trying other methods prior to this novel. And it kind of just is like, everybody gets fed up. It seems like, to me, at least.
Yeah, so I think it was a good steps in the right direction for like, how do you deal with, we talked a lot in the last episode about, PTSD and how do you deal with all those struggles and stuff like this. But I think this is a good one of, okay, what does the road to recovery look like of dealing with your issues and dealing with your processes, trying to figure out who you are as a person, trying to find out, when your life gets flipped upside down, who you really are to the core. And it's a great book of self-discovery and trying to figure out, who is Nesta in this new world that she's thrown into. So I thought it was really, I think that's one of the reasons I enjoyed this book a lot. And I don't know, I don't know where it is in the rankings, but it's up there in the rankings for me. And I think that's part of the reason.
Well, Sheena's telling you where it is. It's got to be the top. That's what
Number
Sheena's
one.
saying. Right.
But doesn't
What's up,
Sheena also like
Bobby?
Tamlin? So
Oh God.
She does. She
So,
does. She
I mean,
holds out
I
hope
take it
that
with
we'll
a
get
grain of salt.
Yeah.
I take it with a
yeah.
grain of salt.
She holds out hope for Tamlin the way you're holding out hope for Elaine. That eventually there'll be some redemption book that brings Tamlin back
But which
around.
one's more realistic?
The Elaine one is
Sheena-
absolutely more realistic.
Sheena and my friend Jackie, who's in the chat, can become BFF Tamlin friends
There
because
you go.
Oh,
See, they're out there. They're out there.
there are a few of them out there. They gotta find each other.
she calls him her baby boy. Like he's this little boy. He needs to grow up. Sheena's like needs to take care of him, and he needs some helping. Justin, what are your thoughts on the journey of Nesta as far as her, mental health recovery that she's kind of going through? Did you click into any parts that you found relatable or that you found valuable?
I found it relatable from almost the outside looking in, like seeing all her friends and family, trying to be patient with her, some of them anyways, more than others, to at least try to understand her, try to sympathize and get a grasp of where she's coming from. I don't think, they all fully got there till, later in the book and more had come out. But, obviously Cassian, I love Cassian and to know just, him, and this goes back to like when we talked about, I know we asked the question on like book 3 or whatever it was, and I said, who's your favorite out of these guys, and you all picked Cassian. I wasn't like there yet, but and Greg, because you already had read this, so like I get it now, and Cassian is like,
you get it now.
So he so just to see the patience in that, and I think that's also relatable for, at least for me, like I mean, I know friends and family and people who have gone through certain struggles and trying to be supportive and trying to be, again, just understanding of what they're going through, and them, and yet still see them like lash out or go against or or fall back into whatever the situation is for whatever this, but so in that regard, I think it was very relatable. And again, as we said in the beginning, like just to see her grow from that, it was huge. So, and not just her, but them, I mean, the family and Cassian and everyone else. So I thought that was a big part of it.
Well, because I think they're also all feeding off of her trauma in some ways, right? That negativity bleeds out. And so they are finally able to kind of breathe a little as she starts to contain some of this, I think. So that's it's a great point about how it affects everybody, right? Yep. What about you, Alicia? How did you feel about this journey that you did not to like spoil anything, you had a huge physical recovery over the last 2 years for yourself, as far as like learning to move again and all that strength training and PT. Were you relating to some of that journey?
Yes,
hopefully that seemed not too familiar, but
there were so many things about this, which is I think why Nesta became so important to me as a character. So there's like I will not spend eons talking about them, but one, the way that she secludes herself from her family after what happened and the reason why she is having to be forced into this, and the way that she still distances her family. When I was a teenager, nothing like severely traumatic happened, but I fought with my mom a lot. And so when I got to college, I just did the dip. I was like, I'm living on my own. I'm not coming home right now. Like, I need to figure out myself. And like, I then going back had a lot of shame and have had issues like trying to get myself back into my, like having a great relationship. I have loving relationships with my brother and my sister, but I wish that I knew them better. And so her kind of seeing how, okay, I'm gonna start getting emotional. Get it together. Okay. Her seeing how Elaine and Faerie started to get really close because she secluded herself from them and like struggling with her shame surrounding that. That was very relatable to me and something that I had gone through in my life. Also, the way that she decides that what's going to make her feel better about herself is helping others, and like starts to like pull in her, like wanting to get all of the people in the library to come and be part of this training, and wanting to say like, we can all be stronger together. Like, this doesn't have to be just about me. I found that very relatable. Like, she was finding her outlet for her self-healing through helping others heal and finding some connection in that. That's something that I also relate to. And then, yes, like for those of you who don't know, my main career is a dancer, and in 2023 I tore my labrum and I was out of dance for like 8 months, and then I had surgery and it was like a year-long recovery, and there were moments when I was like, I'm never going to be able to do what I love again. Moving is so hard. Like, how do I get through this? And what I thought was really interesting, especially, was you could tell that Sarah really researched her like recovery processes in both mental and physical like wellness, because so much of the stuff that Cassian was saying to Nesta about like, you know, like balance and understanding like your deep core and like how you control your understand the roots of your body and like the like anatomy and physiology stuff that he was saying is like accurate. Like it's all accurate stuff. And so kind of watching her like go through that, and like I have no intention, nor do I wish to walk up or down 10,000 stairs, but just like that process of like every day you get a little bit further and trying to see that like those tiny victories do amount to something much larger in the end. And like being able to look back on it retrospectively once you've accomplished that, I think that was very relatable for me. So like the more that I think about Nesta's journey, the more I can find like points where I can relate it to my personal journey and like different aspects of my life, right? Like she did this over the course of so many months, whereas like those experiences for me were over years and years of my life. But there's a lot that she goes through and a lot of relationships that she builds that I saw as like relatable or almost like empathetic to things that I experienced in my life.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what makes it a powerful story, makes it work, is how there's so many entry points and connectability for most people.
Yeah, it's very real. Like it's not a pretty picture of what recovery is like in any form of recovery. It's very like raw, and there's I mean, we get the
and there's setbacks and failures and successes.
Then we get like the reward of like lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of sex with Cassian, but we still have to go through like all the crap to get there.
Well said. And for me, like you touched on something a little bit there that was the big piece for me, was watching it go from something that was being forced on her to something that she was owning, right? That felt like she had agency in what was happening to her. And it took somebody like Cassian being able to recognize you can't force these things on her. She needs to have buy-in. Right. And whatever that was, whatever form that took, he was trying to adapt this to fit her. Right. So those little things like taking her to the town and letting her see the armorer woman that she makes a connection with. Right. Choosing where they're doing their training, pushing for like, oh, I want to use swords, and him being like, well, we'll give that a try. Sure. Right. Allowing her to like connect to what she wants to read and not forcing something on her, or how she wants to eat, or where she wants, all these little things. I think giving her a sense of control, because she clearly feels like someone who has no control, right? Yeah. So that for me, that was like the big piece that was like in my life that I could see was like those situations never seem to work when the person feels completely helpless and can't in any way have control over what's going on and it's happening to them. And that moment when it clicked in, where it felt like Nesta was on the right path, was when she felt like she was having some say and control over those steps as they were presented to her. What's up, big nasties in the chat? What's going on?
Hey.
Well, then let's dive into a few of these things. Obviously, the training we've talked a lot about, but let's hear a little bit. I'm going to jump to Justin this time. Cassian and the training, the physical training. Obviously, she starts bringing in friends to do this training as well. It goes from just like strength training to like weapons training to, really a lot of like self-discovery happening here. What were some of your thoughts on the warrior woman growth that she goes through here?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it goes to what you just said, John, about her finding her own like reasoning to want to do this or be part of it. And also, I think like her meeting these other girls to and hear kind of what situation they're in, Gwyn kind of being away from the world for so long and not knowing certain aspects, but also knowing she's been through a lot. And then also, and with I can't remember the one lady's name that like was her boss or whatever, Gwyn's higher up, that she had to sneak the book and swap it out.
With an M, I think.
Yeah, like so just stuff like that where it's like Nesta's mind, she's like, you got to deal with that, like, oh no, like, and she had her back. So but she started to connect with people and feel for them and want to support them, and I think that's what really got her own buy-in to just care in general about things. So between that and then Emery and learning more about Emery's history with the shop and her family and all that stuff, and knowing like she should be able to defend herself and all these other aspects of it, I think that also just clearly helped more and more for not just herself training with Cassian, but being able to be like, oh, these girls are interested too, and I think they could really benefit from it. And then it just at that point became just, let's get creative, let's start thinking of other things. What about this? What if we're in a scenario where we need to use a sword, or we need to use a shield, or all these other things, where they were like skipping it, they wanted to like skip ahead, or they wanted to get to the good stuff, the strong weapon, all the different weapons and stuff like that. So I think that was just probably the biggest selling point for her, and it was just cool to see. And I think again, very relatable in that regard, because when it helps more when you have other people that are like either you're responsible for, or you're just helping, or you have on your side. Yeah,
too,
yeah.
Right? There's like because she had sympathy for these other women who had battering experiences, physical, emotional trauma that they were healing. So there was a simpatico going on there.
Totally. Yeah. She didn't want to let, Gwen fall to the wayside, or, she struggled in one way, shape, or form. In her mind, she's like, hey, like, I actually think this can help. I think for all of you, this can help, especially knowing more and getting understanding of what you guys are all going to. So,
well, that's very human nature too, right? Like, there's a psychologist, I forget where I read this, but like the idea of if you took someone to the bottom of a mountain and they were just them, like how grueling would it be to climb this? It'd be really, really tough. But they're like, if you were there with like a group of other people, you'd be like, oh, they cut the time in half of how fast they think they could complete. But then if you were with people that you loved and cared about, they cut the time down that they thought they could accomplish it a lot more faster. And I think that shows you about just the idea of when you have your group of people that you're finding, that you do think you can accomplish so much more because you're in it together.
Interesting. Awesome. So Alicia, a big part of this, for at least from my perspective, was the endorphin side of this, right? Where she's somebody who's really been a prop, for her dad and now her sister. And it's like never really had consistent physical exercise. And I feel like there's a part of her journey here in like certainly connecting to friends, like Justin is saying, but then also just like my physical health and well-being and the joy I get from that personal growth.
Yeah.
How did you connect to some of that journey? Because obviously the exercise is a significant part of this.
Yeah. Well, she's coming from relying on alcohol, which is a drug, to get her through. And endorphins are also like a drug, right? So like you're still getting that release, that like satisfaction of the endorphin release to be like, oh, I need more of this. I need more of this. And she's like kind of coming off of one thing and looking for the next thing that like keeps her going. And I think that after she gets over herself and actually starts training and stops embarrassing Cassian, and like they have the moment of like understanding where he's like, oh, she doesn't want to do this in front of other people. She needs to do that. Like you were saying earlier, she needs to do this her way. So she, he's like, okay, we'll train here and we'll do this. I think that once she starts getting into it and she understands that it is actually making her feel better and stronger, both mentally and emotionally. And then I think another really big thing for Nesta is that when like you learn so much about her in this story of like the way that her mother sort of like groomed her to be a very specific role in their family. And so like from the get, she was told like, this is your role, this is your place, and this is what you have to do. And these are the things you have to shut off. And these are the things you have to be excited about. And then you get the moment when her and her like new family, like Faerie had her found family, which was like the Night Court people, but Emery and Gwen are like Nesta's found family, right? And when they come up with the idea themselves that they want to re-envision what the Valkyries are, that's where I think she really like her endorphins kick in even more, because there she's like, we're taking like Illyrian philosophy and Valkyrie philosophy and we're funneling them together. And I'm saying with my people, this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. And I'm not being told who that is by anyone else. And so I think like that kind of like affirmation when it gets like building up and the increase of like success that they have in building that and like the momentum that they build is like her form of like really getting into wanting to move forward because she's found something that's her own. In any other circumstance, she's been, you know, she was told how she had to act in the human world. She was forced into the cauldron. She's told by Reese, like how she has to handle, like during all of the war, she's told what to do, how she should be fighting, how she should move forward. And so in this instance, she's like, no, this is, I'm taking ownership over my journey and this is how I'm doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So Greg, I'm going to spin the question as I get to you. As far as her physical growth or physical strength, this journey, the linchpin for all of that is Cassian, right? The patience, the understanding, the support, the you know, the sex, whatever, like that physical journey, he is like there for the whole thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about her physical growth and her exercise journey and how you feel Cassian plays into that?
Yeah, I do want to one point, Alicia, that you mentioned about, you know, how her finding her found friends and stuff. Like the whole series, you know, I'm a younger sibling, and so like I get that whole mindset of like you go to high school and you know your brother's been there for 2 years before me, and it was, oh, you're Greg, you know, you're Chris's little brother, and like you're all these friends, and then it's like once you get your people, you're like, cool, like they're nice, but like these are my people, like so like that very much was like felt like that because she'd been in the Night Court era realm a lot. So I did think that was a good point. So John, you're asking though about Cassian, about the physicality.
Cassian's role in her physical transformation, right? That the ways in which he is supporting her through all those aspects.
Yeah. Well, I think for, you know, I coached wrestling in high school, and I might be doing that again and things like that. But like as a coach, like you have to figure out like how do you motivate people and how do you motivate someone, and how you motivate one person isn't going to be how you motivate, right? Like what gets you like, I'm motivated to do this doesn't mean someone else, because everyone gets motivated because of who we are. We're all unique people and things. And so for Cassian really did as an instructor have to be willing to adapt to and change, kind of like you said, of understanding like she's not going to thrive in this setting. We need to let her find another setting. There's also a balance of knowing to say when you say, okay, I'll let this go, but I'm not going to let this go. And I think Cassian, you know, in the most basic sense was like a really good coach in that of learning to adapt of, okay, where do I say, okay, I can bend on this because this is going to help you grow and thrive in what you're trying to do. And other parts where I say, no, this is where I'm going to hold my ground here because this is actually going to be better for you to do this in this moment. And I think you see that. And, you know, Cassian's also still struggling with his own stuff of, you know, he's got the feels for her. And that plays into it of how does he, you know, he wants to do what's right for her, but he also is like, he's got those fairy goggles on.
He's got the mating bond going.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's aware of it, even if she's unwilling to even acknowledge it. Right.
Yeah. There's like a protective layer that he has around her. But it's also great that one thing I love about all of these books is that no one ever says except for Tamlin, no one ever says you can or cannot do that because you are a girl. Like he doesn't alter his training because she's female. Like it's the same training that he gives to everyone else. And I think that that's like for Nesta, especially coming from a place of being told like in the human world, your role is to find a husband. And that's, you know, that's your strength to come into the Fae realm and understand that she doesn't have limitations based on her sex is really, I think, important to her figuring out how to find her own way. And Cassian is like, all the points you made are so good about how he coaches her and like changes what he's doing to make sure that she gets the most out of it.
Justin, for you, like when you started to get into Cassian's mindset, because obviously the book kind of splits narratives, right? Where we're sometimes with Cass and we're sometimes with Nesta, as far as like being supportive of her, yet also being stern. What were your thoughts on how he managed Nesta's recovery?
Yeah, like I think it just goes back to his patience ultimately, and that showed like just true character of who he really was. And I've always liked him, like, you know, through Farah's stories and everything else, and he was always that a little more fun, a little more loose, you know, oh come on Reese, like loosen up kind of guy, you know, like
Let's go have a naked snowball fight.
yeah, like so so that was already to me like you know, they had kind of started to build that, but you really got more of like just deeper with him as far as his character goes, his patience, having a deep understanding of what is needed for someone who's going through what Nesta was going through. And as you all are saying, not to just force it on her or to make her do anything, and also to not like pity her or, you know, overdo anything either. So it was
Right.
a good balance. And I mean, a lot of it is just through his own experiences, and they related through so much of it as we go on to learn more about, you know, between the two of them and their histories of, I mean, Cassian had a tough time through his, you know, life too. So
Yeah,
I
I was
think
gonna
a
say
lot of
that's
that was taught.
a lot of his backstory and trauma comes out in this as well, right?
Big time. Yeah. So I think that alone played or at least it helped a lot more from his perspective to be able to understand her versus her sister or versus just some of the other, you know, main characters. So,
Right. Alicia, did you have any last thoughts on Cassian's
Well,
teaching methods or whatever?
I think that like there's a pivotal like turning point in Cassian understanding that like Nesta can play the game also. You know what I mean? And it is the moment when she's in the stairs and she comes up at the stairs and they have their like first intense sexual encounter against the wall, and she just
Yeah.
she's like, there you go, I'm out. See
Oh, yeah.
you. And she's like, the ball is in your court now. Like she levels up the playing fields there. And I think that gives him like permission to say like, oh, I can like, we can go hard in multiple ways. And like, you're like not just messing around and like, you're not just like pitiful and I should feel sorry for you. Like there's
Right.
way more to you. And you're showing me through what you're doing in training, but also like the relationship between the two of us. Like that is a power move on her end. That entire scene, she knows what she's doing.
And
like
he's incredibly competitive as well. So like they
Right.
have a competitive, you know, I could easily see that strategy not working with another person, but
Right.
because they are both incredibly competitive, they actually have several moments when the other person's like, I can't go next. I can't go to her next.
Has
I
to
can't,
go.
or I have to go next. They know the like order of operations because there's this competition almost happening.
Yeah. And I think like that they're like emotional and sexual relationship kind of fuels the motivation for the rest of the stuff, because he understands like all of her, right? And
Yeah.
not just like where she is in the training room, but like all her little idiosyncrasies, like everything about her.
Yeah, for sure. No, 100%. Let's talk a little bit about the House of Wind, because it connects a little to the library, right? There's a lot of literature stuff happening in this book. We have time with Nesta working in the library, you know, filing books, reading books, connecting with people who've been surrounded by books their whole lives. And then we've got this magic of the House of Wind that seems to connect to her and feed her all the smut books that she wants to read or all the training books that she could possibly need. There's this fun connection to literature going on in this book certainly between Nesta and I guess maybe a time that she never really had an opportunity to spend reading up until this point, maybe in her life. So whose turn is it? I think it's Alicia's turn. Like what were your thoughts on how reading impacts Nesta's journey?
Well, it's interesting because she finds like solitude in those moments, right? Like that's like her safe space, because even in the previous books, when we first find her, like when Feyre comes back to the Night Court and she goes to the House of Wind, like where's Nesta? She is in the library. She is reading. So I think she finds a safe space. And I think that what's really interesting, as a person who had never personally read any like real smut before I read this, which like I love. Thank you all for saying that nothing was smut until book 5, because it wasn't. But like there's an interesting sense of power that, as a woman who like doesn't how do I say this? It's easier and more acceptable for men to be seen in these like very sexual places where women are often shamed for it, right? Like
Sure.
there's like a man is a player, a woman is a whore, right? There's like this
Right.
vibe.
Double
When
standard.
you read smut, when you've never read smut before, you suddenly understand this like ownership and power of like your own sexuality and your like freedom to express it however you want. And I feel like that like gives Nesta like another level, and like it's a way for Sarah to connect with her audience and say like, you're powerful, you can own every element of yourself including your sexuality. See Nesta, she's doing it. And so I
Right.
think like there's that level, and I also just think
Well,
that
and there's no judgment from Sarah as the storyteller or the other female characters who are also reading similar books at different
right,
points in the story. There's a they can laugh about it and be like, oh, this
yes,
is ridiculous, but there's also just like a comfortability that maybe
Mm.
happens in allowing it to happen.
yeah, and her relationship like with the house and with reading, like in my mind the house is, I don't think the house before Nesta was really magic. Like Cassian talks a lot about how he's like, the house has never brought me food before. The house has never done that. Like, that's weird. Did Reese do that? So I've always viewed the house as like an extension of Nesta. It's like her inner voice of like, you can do this. And so she kind of like turns the house magic throughout the process. In my mind, anyway, that's my headcanon, is that like it wasn't a magical house in that way before Nesta was like embedded in the house. And then it's like a mirror for herself. So like as she becomes more confident, her relationship with the house grows, the house becomes more powerful. It's like her subconscious saying like, yes, you would like this and I like this. And I think the house does end up with its own identity, but that relationship that they build through like sharing books and all of that, I think is just an extension of Nesta, and seeing it reflected back to her in the house is how she finds her strength.
Ooh, that's fascinating. I like this because obviously they don't explain the House of Wind yet. I think it's kind of fun that it's left unanswered in some ways, right? Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll go to Greg this time.
You want me to follow that? Like,
I'm
Come
so
on,
sorry. I've
dude,
been
maybe.
dying to talk about these books. Like,
no,
Well,
that's,
look, Greg,
my
I
whole
mean,
soul
you're
is so happy.
you're one of the most well-read guys I know, so clearly you have a strong connection to books, libraries, and learning. You've got to have at least some appreciation for Nesta utilizing literature in a way to continue her like emotional growth, right? Because obviously if Cassian's helping with her physical growth in all possible ways, and then we've got emotionally this other side that needs assistance just as much, intellectually as well, right? There's a ton of interesting benefits that come along with that.
yeah. I mean, there's the benefit of reading, right? Whether it's in a form of a novel, a comic, or any form, or even listening to audiobooks and things like that. Like you grow, you learn, you're testing your mind, you're learning things that you didn't know. You're trying to, unless you're listening to an audiobook, you're trying to figure out words that you've never heard or know how to speak or say those things, and you still struggle with that.
Yes, every day.
But what I love is Alicia, you kind of hit it on of, she's reading some smut too in the midst of everything, like, and it almost is giving like validation to it of, like this book has worth just like a historical document book, right? Like
Sure.
reading is reading. And like there was some point in our real world where to have a show talking about smut books would not be seen as like normal or okay. And there was something in the zeitgeist of pop culture in the last couple years at some point where it was like, it's cool. Like we're not, these aren't your Fabio cover books that your mom was reading, like that.
But let's be fair, that I think it's always existed, but we're talking about the normalizing, right?
Right,
The
right.
allowing
and
of it.
And Elise, you pointed out, she normalizes it through her reading it and not knocking it as much, right? Like it's almost this kind of like layer inside of a layer of like you're reading a smut book and there's a person who's reading a smut book in said smut book, and
He's like, it's okay.
yeah, like but I think it's giving that validity to it of, as much as you need to physically train, right? As much as you need to be shape your body and, you know, put healthy stuff in it so that like you can do the best. If you aren't also growing your mind and your imagination, you're kind of wasting half of your, you know, potential there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's seen of, like, let that growth, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you can spend a lot of time in the gym, but you also got to be spending some time cultivating your mind and things like that. And there's a balance right there that so often gets in our world gets overlooked, right? Like, you're a gym bro. Oh, you're a nerd because you read. And it's like, no, you should be both. Like,
Mhm.
you should be like working
Why do you
out,
have
and
to
if you've got an
pigeonhole, right?
audiobook, if you can be
Yeah.
on the treadmill and or pumping some iron and you can be listening to an audiobook, like, man, that's great.
The same way that we can balance something like escapism, right? Reading a book for escapism to like relax and unwind versus something that's going to like, you know, fill you with a bunch of knowledge about a topic that you want to learn about. I don't know that we have to pigeonhole ourselves into saying one thing is literature and the other is smut or trash. I think there's
Mhm.
definitely some, you know, obviously all of us here on this panel are nodding because it's like we read comic books and that's often considered to be a throwaway form of literature. And I think what I like about Greg's point is that like we've got I'm deep breathing. Is we've got a character who is justifying literature as a means of self recovery and self preservation and self growth, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Justin, I mean, we've hit on a lot of topics there, but I don't think we spent enough time on all the characters in the library. If you want to add some more detail into that portion of it, because we get a spectrum of women working in and around the preservation of knowledge in the Night Court, women who are obviously in a varying degree of age and life experience, who've bonded together over this important task that they've got. But literature matters a ton to this crew, and it seems to be an ongoing theme that Nesta buys into, right?
Yeah, big time. I think, and I'm not going to remember names for a lot of the side characters, but just to know that, like you said, how important like the books were, the order of them, you know, when especially like again referencing like the one who was requesting specific books at a specific time and how to a T she was expecting them, and how Gwen was like, oh my God, I gave her 7 and I meant to give her 8 or whatever. Like, and it was such a big deal. Really did show. And it took Nesta a little time to really even get all that. I mean, well, a lot of time, because she, right, like being given the job to like just be here, and her kind of wondering like, what do I do? How do I do it? She was doing things more manually than others, and you know, didn't know that there were certain shortcuts to certain things in the beginning. And so I thought it was a cool experience for her to be working in the library and being around everybody, especially at that time, especially when she was going through everything that she was going through, to just I mean, even being in the library, I felt is an escape in itself for her, and take her mind off of certain aspects of things and be able to, you know, dive in or learn, you know, others. So you know, between all that, and
pays off too, because obviously later when she wants information on the Valkyries or the Troves, that's the first place she goes. These physical resources and these amazing women who have access to and know where to find it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too, when Gwen finally, or towards the end, as she like says, hey, I got this great news, and she's so excited, and she tells the girls like that they are being written into the next hymn or you know, book that they were putting together, and that was like they owned that, and they were so excited for that, and all the different like thoughts of like, oh my God, like this is going to be mentioned, like that we're like still just in the process of training, you know, and like getting better. And just I can't imagine how great that book's going to be, and all the history that's actually been, and that it was such a big deal because it was being taken serious. It was actually being part of history, being tracked. So for them, that was just like, it was just cool to see that moment or those moments, and see how excited they were about all that. So
great point. I totally had forgotten over that bit. So thank you for bringing that back up. We got a great friend in the chat. Our friend Gore is in the chat. What is going on, my man? He says books are intimate friends. They make us comfort who we are, and they reveal things about us that we will only want those intimate friends to know.
Yeah.
Well said, Gore.
It's funny, Gore. I messaged John the other day. I was reading a book by Eugene Peterson. What was it called? Doesn't matter, but Journey of Long Obedience or something. Anyways, but they mentioned Gore, a long obedience in the same direction. there. I wanted to get it right. But they mentioned Gore Vidal in like the first chapter. I was like, oh, Gore, you pop up everywhere in my life.
And we got also Eric from Side Quest Comics. What's going on, Eric?
What's up,
Good to
Eric?
see you, my friend. So I want to talk about a specific sequence, and it branches into a lot of other things, but it's like a 3-chapter sequence that's basically the hike, right? Where Nesta has her breakthrough, right? And she burns a lot of bridges with people, basically sets fire to everything, and Cassian has to like rush her off into the wilderness and force her on a march, basically like we're gonna walk this out of you. And she goes
other things out of you.
I mean, it when they get to the lake, it definitely transitions, but like
they go swimming. Right?
There's so much I like about that sequence, and it seems to be like the centerpiece of the novel in a lot of ways. So I was gonna throw it to Greg first on just this what this sequence meant for you as a reader and these characters as they're evolving, like, because I absolutely loved it. So I mean, is there any thoughts you have on this?
This is a scene right after where basically Reese Cup bans her from Valeria. Is like, you got to get out of here. Like,
she tells
I'm gonna kill her if she stays here. Yeah,
because
tells Faerie
it all goes downhill.
Because Faerie didn't know that she was going to die giving birth, but Reese Cup did, and he was keeping it from her. Hence the communication piece. That's what I was talking about.
She basically, they confess that they have some secrets that they were kind of keeping from her. She confesses all of their secrets right back to them, and just it's a lot of like spit and fire, because all the physical work and all the maybe intellectual work she's doing has not resolved the trauma that she's got on the inside as far as trust and family goes. And so she, breathes fire on everything around her, and Cassian just rushes her off into the woods. And ultimately, she's not wrong. I think she calls people out on a lot of their BS and a lot of their things. And so I'm not trying to make it seem like she's the only one to blame in the sequence, but it really was, finally, without the facade of alcohol or whatever else in front of her, she was able to vent some of those things that have been hanging and weighing on her. And as a result, then Cassian's like, we're going to walk it off, and we're going to spend 3 days walking it off. We're going to spend a lot of time just walking and get through and be in silence and just live off of the land for a little bit and go camp.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to what we were talking to about, like, right, like as far along as she is in her recovery, she still has past trauma that she has to deal with. There's trust, right? Like, there's betrayal that she feels, neglect from family, that she's like, this is still, it's not something that's going to heal overnight. It's not going to heal this book, right? Like, it's going to take some time. And there is struggle sometimes, I think, for a lot of us, even if it's not the right way to address something, but like when we see the hypocrisy in something and you call it out, like, even if you're going to burn it down, you're like, listen, I'm going to call it as it is. Was there a better way to go about it and do it? Sure. But if you're still processing and dealing with stuff and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and get lectured about stuff when I find out that you guys are just being hypocritical with how you're communicating and the secrets that you're all keeping from each other. And so, like, again, I don't think she's in the wrong much. Sure, could have been a different way to go about it.
Not what she says, how she says it, right?
Right. But still, in that moment, like, she also has concern whether she wants to admit it or not for her family, because the stuff that's being kept from her affects her sister and affects what she's going through. And like that she has a right to know these types of things that are being kept from her as well. And so it's kind of this look of where it doesn't make Reese look as good. Like, this was one of those like big chinks in his armor of like, where it comes off of like, I'm the man, I know what's the right thing to do and how to tell you what to do. And it kind of was like, Reese Cup, this is not the best look for you right here. Like, because she's
not my Reese.
It's not your Reese, right? It's not the Reese we came to know and love. And so, like, to see like what that deals with, and then and in the midst of that, if I'm not wrong, I'm pretty sure Reese realizes like he kind of made a mistake and is like, no, we need to backtrack this a little bit too. And Cassian's like, no, we're gonna gonna kind of see this out a little bit now, because we're gonna take this as a learning step here.
Yeah.
For sure. Justin, obviously, this is when the mating bond also kind of clicks into a new level. The relationship between Cass and Nesta, it seems to formalize and be less of a competition and be more of genuine affection. How did you feel about how their relationship grew in these few days?
Yeah, so I had just pulled up my notes. So as I read through all these books, I would just jot down literally maybe 1 to 3 sentences per chapter. I tried my best to. There were a couple I would miss.
I can't do that, so I'm impressed.
So I would actually
Put it
write down. I would write little notes, and then on top of that, I would actually, for some, I actually had a little bit of a star rating. So like, if I really just loved the chapter, I'd put 5 stars, little emoji stars, you know. So the parts that we're referring to right now, and I had to like scroll back through just to see. It is technically chapter 46 through 51-ish. We'll
it's
call
the
it.
end of the second part. I think the third part starts right upon the end of this. Yeah.
So just it's funny because I'm looking back at like the phrasing I'm using for certain things, and
I love it.
So, but like, so 46, I had 5 stars. 47, I had 5 stars. 46 is the intense chapter where she unleashes. You know, and yes, John, as you said, like, you know, these were all like facts, or a lot of it was, you know, factual, but she had done it in a way that she was trying to hurt people, you know, and obviously with the anger and everything. What, and then, and Greg, what you were saying, like, I'm just like skimming my notes. Rhysand was very, or he regretted essentially after yelling and freaking out, yelling back and getting loud, I guess, having to try to apologize. But what the parts with the hike and them really going off and it being, you know, no cell phones, quiet, you know, kind of escape. That to me was one of the biggest chapters, because I learned, and throughout all this, like I always think, I should have said this in the very beginning, but I always think about Nesta from the first couple books and how angry I was at Nesta when I knew things like, you know, Pharaoh was out chopping wood and hunting and doing all these things for the family, and Nesta wouldn't. And there was no reason as to why. There was no good reason as to why she didn't want to help in any way, shape, or form. Why she didn't want to help her dad. She just seemed like, I don't know, like a coward that just didn't do much. And it didn't give much, you know, much else explanation to it throughout
and they never dealt with it.
Right. So in the chapter, they talk about, or that's where it really comes out, where she has a full breakdown and just trying to explain, or she admits basically what's hurting her, the fact of her dad, you know, her regrets basically for her final words to her dad, and how she treated her dad all through the years. And a lot of it had to do with her anger. She had so much anger for her dad that she would rather starve and be angry at her dad than to actually help the family and support what Pharaoh was doing and feed them. Exactly. So it was just her admitting all these things in this one chapter, and it was really, really heavy. And the growth part between her and Cassian at this point, Cassian was so good about it, and he was so understanding, and he was, well, one, he was trying to explain, like, you know, your dad's death is not your fault, and he went all, you know, through the details of that, and then he had gone through sharing aspects of his situation with his family and his mother and things like that. So just those two things together, and the way he helped her through a lot of that, or they really helped each other, was probably the bigger way to say it, but or the better way to say it. But that to me was like they were all in on, you know, for each other. It wasn't just the physical connection or the training or whatever else at that point. So
I mean, they were all in on each other too.
Well, that too, they were, that all helped. But from an emotional side, and really getting a full understanding now for Cassian's sake, like getting it. Oh, like she had bottled all that stuff up. So that was, for me, that was huge to just fully get the understanding, and also very relatable, because a lot of us in life act certain ways and can be stubborn in certain ways based on something that we don't say out loud, to Greg's point, maybe not communicate it properly, or not have a medium that helps you share certain things. And I think a lot of that was,
and acknowledging, I think, the guilt that she's carrying, because she acts like some of this stuff doesn't bother her. She acts like, you know, her dad's death doesn't bother her, or she acts like what happened to her sister when they were living in that shack doesn't bother her. And I think acknowledging some of that is huge for her growth.
It was a big, Yeah. Chapter 50, if anybody's looking for it.
Yeah. We always
have it in my
try
notes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Makes me so happy.
We got to say hi to Mars, one of the awesome
Hi,
community
Mars.
members in our chat. What is going on, girl? And another homie that we're going to be hanging out with in a week from tomorrow. A week from tomorrow night. We're all in the same house. We're sharing a house together.
And
for-
apparently Mars has a book that we're going to be reading.
apparently she's got some Avengers themed smut for us all.
Oh.
I'm just curious. Yeah. Drop some information on us here in the chat, or some links if there's if this is fanfic. I'm
As
assuming.
Stacy just peeked around the corner, like, "What are you talking about?"
Say what? This is the spicy show, Stacy. You got to be ready for this.
That's right.
This is going to be a lot of what we talk about. Yes, be ready. So Alicia, yeah, this hike opens up a lot of psychological doors that I think Nesta's been hiding and keeping shut. And I was curious your thoughts on that journey for her and the ways it improves her mental state coming in and out of that.
Yeah, well, I think that something that's really important that is at the forefront of this book that Sarah does a really good job of showing us is that recovery is not linear. And so you get to a point where, you know, Nesta explodes because people are assuming that she's in a certain point of her recovery, and then she's like overwhelmed by, you know, the feeling, and she has all this anger. And I think that in that moment, that's one of the places where Cassian is really important to her recovery process, because he scoops her up out of there before it can get too bad for her. And I think that their journey in, you know, through the woods together, it's like, it's great to get like a fresh perspective. You know, she's been in the House of Wind for so long, or just in the library, or just training, and she just like, she needs a shift of focus, right? To say like, what's happening. She needs that space to really like feel what she's feeling. And I think that in that moment, once she says what she says to Faerie, I think she says it out of anger. And I feel like immediately after she says it, she realizes that it was a mistake in the way that she did it. Not that Faerie found out, because I think that she does know that Faerie needs to know, and that Faerie can handle this knowledge, like after everything they've been through. But I think that one of the things that's key in Nesta's journey is her dealing with her shame. Right? Like, she is ashamed of how she actually acted in that house. And that's why she brings up like what Justin was saying about like her anger at her dad. Like, she's ashamed of all of that. And she doesn't ever admit that to anyone. And it's something about like being alone in the forest where no one else can hear them or see them, that she feels like, I can tell Cassian these things. I can open up about my shame. I can let them go. It's like she's letting layers of herself go so that she can kind of become a new version of herself, or like use them to move her forward. And I think that in the moments that he shares, you know, his side of things or his story, she sees that she's not alone in her shame. Like, he brings up the way that he reacted to certain things in his life, and like how he like wants to rip every person apart who ever did anything to his mom. You know what I mean? Like, he has all of these feelings that are so similar to hers, that she takes a moment to be like, oh, I'm not the only one who feels this way. I can talk about this, and I can admit that I made choices that I don't feel great about. And, you know, like, it's really important for her to be able to like let go of that and take ownership of the things that she's ashamed of. And I think that that's kind of the key. And also knowing that like she was like going up in her recovery. She had to take a drop down to be able to get to the next up. And I think that, again, that's something that's so important in understanding recovery. That is why I think that Sarah did such a great job with this book, because it, like Greg was saying earlier, it's not like 2 or 3 chapters and she's recovered. Like, this whole story is her recovery. And that's what's important, because it's not a linear experience, you know, like you might think you're past that, and then all of a sudden you're tumbling back down and you're trying to figure out like, how do I get back from this? And then you can like get out of the hole a little bit faster after you've gone back in it. But you have to fall a few times during your recovery to really be able to be fully recovered. And like we said, we don't think she's fully recovered yet, but like she has to have that low.
Huge strides. That's kind of the point, is these are the biggest and hardest steps, going from, one day I'll deal with that, to today I'm going to start dealing with that, you know, for sure. Or what is the phrase I heard was going from one day to day one. That's what it is. Going from one day to day one.
Yeah.
I want to get into the, I guess, the MacGuffin side of this, the magic side of this. Obviously, after going into the cauldron, Nesta and Elaine have changed in many different ways. There's new abilities and things that are still being fleshed out here, and we get the introduction of this thing called the troves. The dead trove, these 3 items made by the cauldron, and then of course Nesta creating items that are cauldron based. There's a whole magic side of this, and I call it the MacGuffin because ultimately it's just what drives the plot side of this, right? The crown, the mask, and what's the other one? The harp.
The harp. I don't have a harp yet.
Yeah, I was waiting for Alicia to pull a harp.
And the harp.
Yeah.
No, I don't have one.
Like, oh, dang, she got it.
Yeah.
I got the mask.
They're plot devices, and they're very effective plot devices. But they are important, I think, in a lot of ways to Nesta's journey because of both the fact that she's trying to have a creative outlet and apparently creates weapons of the cauldron, but then also these things. What the phrase that is repeated over and over again is like finds like, right? And she
Like calls to like, yeah,
connects to these objects because of her experience with the cauldron. So I was just kind of curious, Greg, I'll start with you. Like, what are your thoughts on the MacGuffin of this book, these troves, and how Nesta's recovery kind of connects to some of them?
Well, I think you know, obviously you got to have the the fantastical aspect of the magic and things like that in this series. I feel like sometimes if I'm gonna knock, I feel like in Sarah's books they are usually like just more of a plot device, like to move a story forward.
Sure.
And there's not as much. It kind of feels thrown in there a little bit, like. And so I get it, but like they're probably my least favorite element of the stories because they almost feel like a means to an end to tell the story that they want to tell, and so they kind of feel forced in there, and they just get turned into a different way, right? First it was the cauldron, now it's the trove, and then it's and so like I don't love them as much. Is this was the one with the mirror, right?
No, I don't think this one is the mask.
No.
Like she
The
fights
mask,
the Kelpie and gets the
mirror
mask
was the
that
third
controls
one, right?
people.
Yeah, the mirror is Faerie. She sees herself in the mirror.
That's right. Okay.
So this one has the mask that allows you
that
to
she found in the bog, right?
Yes, and then the crown which controls people,
which the other queen
which
had.
the queen has, right? And then the harp that
you could travel.
Is the mystery piece. Where is it? Question mark thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And she finds the mask in the bog when like her and Cassian are out, and Cassian's like, stay here, and she doesn't listen to him. And
yes.
Yeah, because she thinks he's dead. So
and
she's
she
like,
calls,
I gotta find him.
Puts it on, and she brings all the dead to like save her, and then she's able to take it off. And yeah.
Yeah. I love that part. Yeah.
No, I mean they're good parts. I just feel sometimes like it just is which magical device can we change here to keep the story going in the way. And kind of I kind of just go.
Can I offer you a perspective that might change that?
Go for it. I would love to. That's why I love these conversations.
So in the part of why I feel the way I feel about Nesta and the house is because of the idea that she is like she figures out when she's like slamming and starting to make these weapons, right, that she makes, and like how her magic is more than it is, right? She is, and the trove happens, and she's able to, control the trove and understand it, and it calls to her, and the way that she does unintentionally makes these weapons to be magical weapons, and she doesn't know what she's doing, and the house becomes a thing. In my mind, that is Nesta's magic telling her that she's stronger than she thinks she is. She's more than she thinks she is. So like, no, it's unassuming for her to make these weapons. She's just like blowing off some steam, but they end up being like amazingly powerful weapons because there's more to Nesta than she realizes is there, than anyone realizes is there. The way that she can call to the different items in the trove and manipulate them and wield all of them without like it destroying her is because she's stronger than she thinks she is. And there's like this pattern happening where everyone thinks less of Nesta. Nesta. Everyone thinks that she's like, you know, she's just a mess. She's just mean. She just doesn't understand. She just needs to get her life together. And every time she's presented with one of these things, she's more than meets the eye. There's more to her than she thinks. And so I feel like this is the way that her magic shows her that she is more than she seems. And so when they like that like blacksmith comes and brings them these weapons, is like, I want nothing to do with these because they are so crazy and dangerous. It's like, you didn't know that Nesta was going to do that. She didn't know that she was going to do that. But once she has them, they hold so much power because it's like her inner strength. It's like her fear, her anger, all of the things that she thinks are bad about her actually make her really strong. And it's like accumulated in these tangible objects and her experiences with them.
Well said.
Yeah, well said. Justin, did you have any thoughts on the trove and these items? Because I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I mean, they definitely feel like devices. They're obviously plot points, tools to move the plot along, but I also can appreciate when it's like, ooh, she is death incarnate, and she has this mask that allows her to raise the dead, that speaks to her so easily. It just amplifies like her status and where she is after the cauldron experience. What were your thoughts on, and of course the weapons that she crafts in the blacksmith shop? Any thoughts on these magical objects? Sorry.
Yeah, I think I'm in the middle as well, because I think there are definitely times, Greg, to your point, of where I almost like forgot about some of the magical aspects because I was so into whatever these moments were, that they then would be like, oh, we still have to address the cauldron, this and that, or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, that's a thing. Like, okay, let me like adjust my mind into like that aspect of it. But once I got into it, I mean, and this goes to like, you guys know, for comics, like I love my action, I love like the intense moments, battles, things of that nature as well, and that we get them in here. So once I'm into it, like I'm really back into it and like cheering. So where she brings the undead and all that stuff, like I was like, yeah, let's go. It's very much like in book 3 when you have the 3 big monsters, whatever they're called, the gods, and I felt like it was an Avengers moment or something like that. Like I just love that kind of stuff. So I was ultimately into it, but there definitely were some moments, Greg, to your point, where I kind of just was caught off guard with it, or I was like, oh yeah, I guess we should, or I guess we have to kind of get an understanding of this or that or whatever. And yes, there were these details of the cauldron and all these different pieces. But and John, to answer your question, yeah, I love that she, like, this whole time, I mean, ever since she went into the cauldron and came out, like I was just waiting for, it seemed everybody kind of knew, like, she was gifted in some way. She had something extra. She was Neo, like that kind of thing. And it was, to me, I was just waiting. I was waiting for when we're going to get, it was only a matter of time before she figured it out or figured out what it was for her. So, I think Alicia, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a great way to kind of show parts of her growing and, and using that.
Yeah, the breadcrumbs were there, right, across the 3rd and 4th books into now.
But it's also like, this book could have been like Nesta's recovery, and that could have been it. But at the same time, like, you do have to have something that ties it to the rest of the world and what else is going on. So like, you guys are making a hugely valid point of like, well, we have to have an element that's like, what is the thing, right? The war is over, but it's not, and why, and how, like, what magical things are moving us forward. So like, it's sort of like, when you think about it, you're like, well, you wouldn't have the story, you wouldn't have the world, you have to have them. So then how do you find meaning in them that's deeper than like what they are to be there? And that might just be like I said earlier, I will make a murder board and 80% of the things will be wrong, but I'm going to find meaning for every little thing that I can because I want to know. And like, I really appreciate an author or a writer in any form who you can look at their work and say, they really thought about this. Like, they thought about how all this was connected. And so I feel like you see that a lot with Sarah. And if you dare to dip your toes into the theories of the Mossverse, the trove is a very specific link to those things. Like, there are a lot of theories about how the harp specifically can kind of, and I don't know if like you want me to go too deep into this, but let's just say that like each of the strings of the harp may or may not represent a different universe. And there's like this, you can go down that rabbit hole for yourselves, but you know, it's like
so those Throne of Glass Crescent City folks can all feel very excited about what that might mean in the
like
future.
there's like, ooh, they're connected because when they're all together, you know, like you have when
so the culminating gangbang across all of these things.
Without giving spoilers, I will say that like you have
the orgy of all these characters.
The orgy, the multiversal orgy. But you have these 3 items that come across.
This fits into Mars's plan, I'm saying.
And then you get 3 specific items in Throne of Glass. There's 3 items that also are important. Okay. And so then you're like, oh, is this like a thing that she's building into?
Wow. I didn't say hi to Ian when he came in. What's up, Ian? Good to see you, my friend. I mean, the last big plot element that I haven't gotten into yet is the blood rite, which is kind of the Hunger Games finale to this whole thing, where the female characters get forced into the competition that Rhys, Az, and Cass have all competed in and successfully won in the past. So this is the like, you know, Sarah's known for like those last 100 pages being just like a rush of just all kinds of action, intensity, plot, and character development. And that seems to be the driving, you know, force behind this last 100 pages. So I'll throw it to Alicia first. Like when it came to this, like, oh, now we're in the Hunger Games finale here. What were your thoughts on the way this kind of wrapped?
Okay, so I will say, this might shock you. Get ready. I will say that this moment, though I loved it and I feel like it was so important to the story, I was like, really? You got 3 friends and they're going to get put in this thing and they're going to get separated. They're going to do it the exact same way that the Bat Boys did it. And they're going to win the same way that the Bat Boys won. I was a little bit like, come on now. Like, we're doing this again. Like, you just told us that this happened in this story and now we're going to see it again. So I did.
So you're saying you kind of saw it coming?
Yeah. Like,
okay.
Because
I did too.
The moment they were like kidnapped and put into it and everything, I was like, this is going to go the same way that it went for the Bat Boys. Like, we're going to get that happening. So I did feel that in this moment. However, I think that the journey, right? Like, again, the charms that they all have imbued with power because Nesta is stronger than she knows she is. And then you have the moment where she like, they're almost there. They're so close, but they're coming up on like they're in the archway and like you can see the finish line, but people are coming to take it away from them. And in Nesta's relationship with her sisters, she put her feelings first and decided, I'm not going to do anything that helps you guys. And then in this moment, she stays. She doesn't let herself go up and touch the thing and be the winner and become like the highest level of Illyrian warrior that you can. She lets her new sisters do that and she stays to fight for them. And that is such a huge, important moment for Nesta as a character because that's her found family and she's choosing to fight for them instead of letting them fight for her, which is what she does with her own sisters.
She's learned some lessons.
Yeah. So it's like, it's really important for her story, but it was a moment where I was like, you just told us how the Bat Boys did this. And now we're doing the same thing.
Yeah. So, bled it out a little early, maybe too much foreshadowing.
It was so like there were so many like amazing epic moments in that whole blood rite, like all of it where you're like, oh my God, like is Emery dead? Is Gwen dead? Like what's happening? How are we going to find them? The beacons, like all of the stuff, like all of their encounters. You're just like, you're worried for them the whole time. But then I think that even though I was worried for them in moments, I was like, well, I know what's going to happen. Like, I know they're going to get through this.
Like for example, like you know they're gonna save Rhys-Anne, like so it's not as emotional because you know it's gonna happen.
Except I didn't know. I was literally devastated. I was
so maybe
I'm gonna send you guys the
maybe
video.
Alicia has learned like Nesta from her past mistake and evolved, and her social emotional journey has led her to be able to see this moment for what it is.
It's a beautiful moment.
I'll send you guys later the full video of me.
I want the ugly. I'm looking forward to some ugly crying.
sobbing, just like pulling my shirt over my face. Like, you'll get it later.
So, Greg, as as a person who sees these writer tricks coming, were you thinking, "Oh, I know how this is going to come to end. They've got to get involved in the blood rights somehow." What's the when they got in there, were you like, "I know how this is going to go"? Were you able to enjoy it? Because I felt like I was ahead of the story a few different times in this portion.
Yes and no. So you knew it was going to be the last 100 pages. You knew, like, there was no way, knowing how buck wild her stories go, that it was the last bit, like it was going to be the blood right. There were so many Easter eggs of the dudes watching her train that were like, that didn't like you, and the sassiness because I think like they had the interactions at Emery's shop and things like this with, like, you knew there was the cousin that would, like, you knew there were just these enough, like, okay, they're going to see these people in the blood right at some point. So like, I didn't get the whole, like, I didn't get the idea of them getting caught and like being pulled into it. I thought that was a nice twist.
Yeah.
I thought at some point it was going to be Nesta and her overconfidence, a little bit of like, we're going to do this with our, and so I appreciated that, like, how they got into it was different. Right. Like, and then it doesn't affect her and Cassian's relationship moving forward, because Cassian would be like, you can't do this. Well, she didn't choose to do this. It was forced upon her, and we get to see who she is through the trials and tribulations. So I like that it doesn't add this stupid thread now in the next book that we don't have to get of their tension between Cassian and Nesta, because, oh, well, you went and did this and I told you not to, and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Like, save that for Tamlin, right? Like, and we don't have to deal with that. So I'm glad that we got the blood right, and that she was forced into it. So like, it's not a thread that we're going to go down. I loved it. I read all the Hunger Game books. So like, I love just like those types of stories.
There's even a Goblet of Fire essence kind of to some of it too.
Yeah,
right?
We're not talking Harry Potter, John. Okay?
I'm just saying.
Why not?
Love Harry Potter.
I have a little disdain for Harry Potter, but that's another story for another time.
I'll talk about that later.
But like, so I liked it. The predictability of, like, I think what I liked is them not getting, not being forced into it. They forced, they got pulled into it. And then I kind of liked what Alicia, what you were saying about Nessa figuring out that moment, right? Like, that was a pivotal moment that needed to happen for her and who she was. There's a little bit of like, the most powerful person besides Nessa, and like as attacking is like, and it's not that big of a deal. It's like, it kind of was like, we hyped this, like, this is like Thanos is like the most power, and you're like, oh cool, it's nothing like that. Like, it kind of felt like that a little bit. Like, it was just like a little bit too, like, give it another book. I don't know, figure out another way.
Right,
So,
because
like,
I didn't have any powers. Like, she didn't have her magic in that moment, so like, it should have been a little bit more of a struggle. Yeah,
that's where I'm at. Like, and so like that, like, so there were moments where I'm like, I get it, but I didn't like necessarily how it played out in certain aspects of it.
All right, so then Justin, last one on the topic. Then, how did you feel about how the Hunger Games went and wrapped up, and what were your emotional experiences like reading that last 100 pages?
So, John, you've read enough books with me and heard enough of my kind of takes on different, the way we read things, that you'll know, and maybe you two will both. I didn't see any of this stuff coming. I was fully like, oh my God, what is happening? No way. They were taken. Where were they taken? I'm not connecting any of the things, but I'm loving it. I'm just going with it.
Awesome.
And like,
that would be the ideal experience, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what you want.
Right. To me, it was a twist and turn every step of the way, and wondering where it was going to go. And Alicia, like what you said, like, I'm questioning if these girls are dead, who's going to survive. You know, even if I attempt to like think ahead, I'm just so way off that I'm like, why am I even trying to guess what's about to happen? Because it's just, I'm like, oh, they're both going to die. She's going to be on her own for the rest of her life, and it's going to be some, you know, whatever. Like,
That would have been
like
terrible.
Yeah, that's what I'm like.
You're
So
also probably
I
reading
never-
it, listening to it so fast, you don't even have time to like consider.
That's true. Yeah, I do. Majority of it, I am listening audio wise, but yeah, like I'm just in the moment and I'm loving every bit of it. And I'm at the edge of my seat. So that from that aspect, I appreciated it. There was I was just going back at my notes for a sec. It was like 67 and 68, both 5 stars. Chapter 67, I wrote, what a chapter. And I just wrote, the girls find Gwen, they jump into a battle, they try to get to the bridge before the others get to it. That's all I wrote. And 5 stars.
What I love is you just keep doing, like, every chapter you've noted is 5 stars. That reminds him, there's a TikTok guy who does, like, he's a Boston accent. He's like Bambi, mom dies, 5 stars.
Oh,
like,
really?
like,
He likes he gives everything.
he
five
like gives
stars,
them a
even
horrible
when it's
review, and he's
horrible.
like 5
Yeah.
stars.
I mean, it could be my channel. It sounds silly. you if you hear my X-Men grades, then you'll know it's up there.
Storm and Black Panther get married, 5 stars.
Yeah.
5 stars.
So yeah, like the one thing I did want to point out was there was a moment in this series where or this is the time where all the girls share when they think they're pretty much down and out, and I don't remember all the exact names, but they basically are sharing the darkest bits of what they lived through, and that to me was such a huge moment to just the character growth and for each other's relationships and understanding each other,
the bonding.
Like it was so deep, and to get it, you know, you're getting it towards the end of the book, you know, and that was like, you're still getting things that are just so heavy and so emotional. And you just fall more and more in love with each of these characters and are rooting more and more for each of them. So yeah, there was that moment there that really stood out to me that I had noted. So that is 5 star, Greg. I'm just saying
5 stars.
5 stars.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep I mean, we're at an hour and 40 minutes already, but what I want to get is some like final thoughts, you know, maybe even like, where would you rank this one among all the others, among your faves? You know, if you have any, you know, we don't have a fancy scoring system here or anything like that, but I'm going to start with Greg. Like, where does this book rank? How did it finish out for you? What did it leave you thinking, feeling, whatever?
We don't have a Scoville ranking for.
We don't do a CGC. We don't do anything. Yeah, Scoville.
Level of spiciness.
I mean, this one. Yeah, we could probably talk about spiciness.
Talk about the spice.
We didn't get into the spice.
I'm looking because I'm looking at my initial rankings on my Goodread. So I gave it a 4 stars.
4 stars.
Now, that doesn't really do much good because every other one besides Frost and Starlight got 4 stars.
That's what I was expecting.
Oh, but Frost and Starlight's so good.
Frost and Starlight got 3 stars.
I understand. It's valid.
I don't give very many 5 stars because I like, in my mind, like, I wish Goodreads had like a 4.5 because there'd be a lot more, but like 5 stars is like, yes, through, like, and I think I have like 3 books on there that are like 5 stars. I think this one for me, it's up there. Again, I'd have to really look at, like, I thought, like, I was already invested in Cassian. And so, like, to get to see who Cassian is as a person, how he handles a strong person as well, like, and doesn't take it away from her, doesn't try to change her, who Nesta is, only tries to help come alongside her and be a strong person that is going to encourage her and help her grow. And like, I was like, this book just made me love Cassian more. Like, I'm a stand for Cassian more than I'm like, this is who we should strive to be like. He's like, he's a champ. And like, but it doesn't take away from who Nesta is, right? Like, Nesta is still a boss with or without Cassian. Like, Nesta isn't this person who needs this damsel in distress that needs a Cassian to come along and save her, but they come along, and because of how strong both of them are as characters, they thrive even more in their strength. And I thought that was really well done, because so often it can be like, yeah, Nessa's powerful, but she couldn't do this if she didn't have Cassian, kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And you don't get that. It's Nessa's taking names and right off the bat and saving Cassian and saving people and yes, she got there because of the help of his training and things like that. But like it's a very more mutual respect, and I like that. So to see that kind of in the relationship of the book, I really was invested in. And maybe, like Justin said, it's recency biased. It was the most recent one. I didn't love the winter solstice episode as much. So like to come off and have a stronger showing, it probably ranks up there higher.
Sure.
It's probably up there. It's probably up there with book 2 for me as my favorite. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. Justin, how about you? I didn't throw it to you first on your rankings. You notice I didn't make you go first.
Had plenty of time to gather my thoughts here.
5 stars.
Yeah. This one's easy. I love this book for sure, and I think that even more and more, and even after talking with all you folks about it, like I was telling everybody, 2 and 5, as Greg just said, like 2 and 5 definitely up there as my very highest. But I actually think this is my number 1 book out of the 5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 2, and I don't know, maybe it's partially recent. I don't know. There were just so much more character building that I was tied into with what Nesta went through, and also just like for myself, like how strongly I felt about Nesta one way, and then to just grow with her and learn about her, and and not judge a book by its cover kind of thing, like all the layers that came with her. I loved that. And then yes, loved Cassian is by far my favorite character, and this just revealed so much more about him fully. So for me, definitely 5 is got to be up there. I think one thing we didn't talk we were talking about we didn't talk too much about the spiciness. I will say there were definitely times of like you really got to be in the right.
We can do a round on the spiciness for sure.
I was just gonna add,
right
you
environment.
got to be in the right environment. Well, because like I'm like dressed up for work, driving to work, and then I hit a chapter, and then I'm like in my car, I'm like, all right, like how do I I got to go to work.
Yeah, with the brain where it's supposed to be.
Literally walking into the office now, so that just happened, and here we go, marketing.
And you're listening to it, like
Yeah.
you're audio booking it.
Yes,
audio. What are those like?
Like I have to turn it down pulling into the parking lot because like if it's loud enough for anyone outside to be like,
it's like echoing through the whole parking structure.
Yeah.
What is this?
And also
roll your windows up, Justin.
Well, that's it. And then the other thing is like because it's read, the author really, or the reader, the narrator really gets into the character. So she does a good job of just like really emphasizing certain aspects of certain things that are going on. So it's just
Sounds
like
real.
it's very
check out the audio recording.
So that's that. And then I will also point out one thing we didn't really talk a lot about, but just like I thought there was so much great humor throughout this that was not forced in any way, but just so subtle and so perfect, and even like the flirting and the tensions between Cassian and Nesta, and even in the prior books too, like it was all there for all that, but like little bits of humor. And the one of the things I always just think of, and I'm sure you guys talked about it in book 4, was the snowball fight, and just how they bring that up again. It's just like little things like that make it it's not just about this grand story, but it's these little personable moments and cuteness and fun and things you laugh at and all that other stuff that just made me appreciate again these characters. Like I'm with you, Alicia. Like I really enjoyed book 4 too. Like I think it's almost like how I like the X-Men, where it's not just so much about saving the world and heroes and capes, but it's more about the dramas and the relationships and the small behind the scenes stuff that you get from book 4. So
the downtime issue.
Yeah, like I love that stuff for the X-Men. So I love, like I read 4 and I was like, oh, I really like 4. So
they just needed, instead of playing baseball, they were playing snowball.
Yes, same thing. It's a sport, go sport.
Especially like I understand the feeling if you're reading them like as they release and you get 4 and you're like, I need more action. But if you're binging them, like, and you just like went through like 1, 2, and then 3, and then you're like, I am not okay. And then you have 4 and you're like, Okay.
Right.
Everyone can be happy for like a
Breathe.
secaroonie before we
Yeah.
have to destroy ourselves again. You know,
It's
like,
an epilogue or a
Yeah, yeah.
prologue,
Get a new box
however
of
you wanna look at
tissues.
it.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly.
Okay, then Alicia, how does this book 5 then rank for you? Where do you feel about this one in the whole scheme of things?
yeah. So when I first read it, it was like, I would say third in my list, like tied with number 4. Like I loved book 1 because it was book 1, but I think like as far as like my experience reading it, that's what I focus a lot when I'm like judging a ranking of something. It's both like what is the content of the story and what is my personal experience, like what's my personal journey, like how do I feel when I'm reading it.
Sure.
And I think that because literally, like I'm not kidding you, I watched an AI video of Nesta coming out of the bog with the mask on. I saw someone be like Cassian's face when Nesta wins the blood right, like all the stuff, every single moment that was like epic in this book, I knew before I read the book.
Oh, that's a
So
shame.
my experience reading it made me feel like wah, wah, like it was really good. But honestly, being able to have this conversation and like take a moment to reflect on like what does this story mean to me as a person, and
Sure.
how do I relate to Nesta's journey, and like how do I see her as a full character, it's bringing it up there for me. Wings and Ruin is my number 1, and I know I'm a rarity in saying that, but it's because that book literally ruined me, like tore me to shreds, ruined me. And I think that this and like 2 and 5 kind of like live in they're tied, you know, in my mind.
Fair.
So I'd say it's somewhere in there, and then 4 and then 1.
And I think that's fairly common. What's up, Rod? Good to see you, buddy.
But I want to say, like, to the point that Justin made about like things that we didn't really touch on, Azriel in this book, like we get to really like see more of him. And like Justin, when you're talking about the humor, like Azriel coming into the dining room and being like, you don't think I can smell your sex everywhere? Like I know what you're doing, you know, and like getting a deeper understanding of his relationship with Cassian, and like the moments where like he comes in and it shifts to Cassian training the Valkyries and him training just the other priestesses, and like seeing him step up and understanding him more, I thought was something that was really great that we got in this story, that we don't like, he's always just sort of like in the shadows, and he still is, but we kind of got a little bit more of understanding who he was through this story, which I thought was really great. And just like kind of under like feeling it out, like where is he gonna go. And then like to Greg's point about Cassian in this story, I feel like you could do a whole second episode about this book and just talk about Cassian and his journey and like what happened with him, because this book, though it is very often like framed as the Nesta book, I really think it's about the two of them so much. Like it's really both of them. There's so much there. And so I think there's not a lot that happens with other characters. They're very secondary, and the focus is very much Nesta and Cassian. But I think that the third person who's really involved in this is Azriel, and we're getting to see like a lot more of him, and then like hints of.
I'm hoping for that Az and Elaine book to be the next one. That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it has to be about them hooking up, but like, were there the focus point?
Okay, you know? Because like justice for Lucian. Okay, like. The man needs some love, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Elaine. Like maybe it's not Elaine, but someone.
He just doesn't have any patience. That's the problem.
He just can't read the room.
He can't.
Right.
My mate.
He is his own problem.
It's aggressive for sure. It's aggressive for sure. But I just feel like,
he's excited.
You know, there's a moment in, I think it might be the third book, when he says to Faerie, I didn't know I was the villain in your narrative. Like that literally stabbed me in the heart, because from the beginning of book 1, I was like, Lucian, like he's right there. First of all, Faerie, why are you in love with Tamlin when Lucian is standing right there?
Way better option.
But I also did have this like, you know, they start out as like BFFs, and then I feel later that like Cassian kind of becomes that for Faerie. But like, I don't know, just I'm gonna go on a tangent, so I'm gonna stop. But like, justice for Lucian, that's all I'm saying. Like, give the man.
It's the same reason Belle didn't fall for Lumiere. Okay, like.
Right.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. He's the guide. He's getting her through. He's making
Yeah.
little quips and jokes.
Now I'm
and-
not going to be able to think of Lucian without a
I
French
know.
accent.
Why
so
did
that's
you
gonna
do that?
wholly mess me up. That's going to keep things wrong. So I'm with. I definitely read this one and felt like it was probably going to be my favorite when I finished. I love ToG a ton, and I think it was always neck and neck. But the more we've talked about it and hearing kind of thoughts on it, it does kind of coalesce a little for me to feel like this is the superior book. But obviously predicated on or built upon all the other books, so it doesn't stand on its own in any real regard. But it is, I think, maybe a writer coming into her own, maybe a writer in a certain space feeling like they can finally, or at least fully, tell a story the way they really want to tell it, and the writer and audience are finally aligning maybe in a really great way, which may lead us nicely to a discussion if we want to quickly touch on smut, because I do think it's interesting. We've joked how we're talking Faerie Smut every time, but this is the first time where I genuinely had moments where I had to like check to see who was around me when I was reading, like, oh crap, like this is the John's Comics with Kids YouTube channel, and here I am like reading some.
Well, this
You
is
might-
what
very
you get,
John, you might
kids.
need to change your name right now on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I've
This
got,
is-
thankfully it's in my block a couple times as well as yours. Yeah, there were definitely times when I was like, sweetheart, my wife, like, read this paragraph. Like, I need you to read this paragraph. Like, tell me, and then like just to see the blood drain or the blood rise, like whatever it was, I wanted to see the reaction just to that one bit. So I guess I'm gonna go to Greg first again. I'll go to Greg because you've been kind of quiet on the smut side. I know we've been jokingly saying these are smut-free books. These are not really racy books. They might have a chapter 55 every once in a while, but like
This book
So
is 50%.
this is they've been 54 is I mean, man, that in that first book, I remember when I read it, I was like, okay, I was like, and then that was it. That was the first time where I gave it to my wife, and I said, like, I didn't give it to her. She was sitting in the room. I said, I'm gonna read this to you real quick. But now that's like that one chapter is all she has in her mind of that's what I'm reading.
that's what
Right,
all the
that's what you're
books are
reading.
like.
That's all
Right?
that ever is. Yeah.
But like it is funny because my mom's a big reader, and like I was like, Mom, you could read A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like it's not. I was like, you can borrow my book, like it's fine. Like I'm like, there's a couple chapters like where it's a little saucy, like you might like make you uncomfortable, but I'm like, but it's one chapter out of 56, like so it's like go for it. This book made me go, dear Lord, don't get into this series because
I hope my mom doesn't read the
Mom,
rest
please,
of these.
no.
Yeah.
Like,
it doesn't get any better from here.
this is where like I don't think she started this series, and I want to just like what was that series you were telling me about? I'm like, oh, it's a thorn of a throne of glass, Mom. That's what it is. It's a throne of glass.
It's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like, cause I mean, man, this is what do you say other than like
Greg, like this is very uncomfortable, John. I was not expecting to throw in this question.
no,
Well,
I
then I'm not
absolutely
here.
expected this question from you.
Okay, good.
I absolutely, but it was like this is where it's like I almost have to find the balance of like how much is too much and how much is like just enough, like, and is there like
So you're saying that like earlier books there was no seasoning, and here you're feeling like maybe we overdid the seasoning now.
well, this is where I feel like this is the book where I feel like people are calling it Faerie Smut.
Yeah, all that.
Mary Futt. Love it.
and like and then like there'd be people like us that were like, it's not that spicy, and I feel like Sarah J is like, okay, I hear you guys, I hear you.
She's just adding more, adding more.
What was that? What did you guys
more.
say? Oh, you don't think so?
Might be
Let me just have her grope Cassian right across on the front, like, and Cassian cannot contain himself, and
major changing point in this story. I'm just saying.
and the way.
So I guess my question maybe should be this, Greg. Going forward, do you want this to be the new standard and consistency, Or do you expect it to revert maybe back to what we had gotten in the previous 3 novels? Maybe that's a better question.
I'd
Is
say
this do you want this to be the new norm or not?
no, but I'm like,
Asterisk.
well, because I feel like the first 3 books, it was always just like there was always the one chapter, right? Like,
Right.
and there's a part of it we talked about in the first one. You have the build up, which makes that chapter in the first one such a big, like, oh, this is because there's the teasing of the chapter, all the stuff happening before. I think for me, like, it got to a point where it started to feel forced, if you will, because I mean, they're locked in a castle. They're like, and I mean, what else do you expect them to be doing all the time? And they're like, I get it. I feel like this is where they're at the stage of like, sprinkle it in, like, give me a chapter 10, give me it at a chapter 19, give me it at a chapter 32, and keep it in. I don't need like, this felt like very heavy on it, and it's fine. And it still is, like I said, it's up there as one of my favorite ones. So like, it doesn't take away from the book.
Sure. And obviously it fits with the character's journey in a big way, right? Where Nesta is psychologically and where she is feeling about herself. And,
but we also had at least 3 books of this being built up to it, where,
right.
Even with Fae and Reese Cup, it was only 1 book of build up for it,
right.
Fae and, what is it, tampon, as you call them?
I feel like that's not fair because tampons are useful.
Yeah.
So like there is that to be said. There is that to be said of like the build up, like you expect this one almost to be so much more climactic, if you will, because of the anticipation. But
I need to like freeze all of Alicia's reactions.
Yeah. All screenshots.
Yep. Well, let's give it to Justin. Justin, do you want this to be the new norm? Are you okay with this being the new norm, or do you expect some kind of balance between, the first recipe and the spicier new recipe we're getting now?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're like, what I appreciated about the amount of times that it was that it wasn't. There were like different meanings behind each one almost. So it wasn't just they just did it again. Oh, and they're just doing it again, and they're just doing it again. But there were like different parts of their relationship, different, they didn't where they knew each other or how much they knew of each other at the time, and a lot of it played off of the flirtiness and teasing and playing mind games,
and the emotions where they were at emotionally.
Totally, and like in the end, it's much more passionate, than it was in the very beginning. So these are all different moments. So I do recognize it as that. That being said, there definitely was a time or two where I'm like, you start to get into that one chapter and you're like, they're not gonna do it again. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. This is one of those. Okay, this is one of those chapters. Like, and I'm just like there was like 1 or 2 of those times where I was just like, they're not gonna do it again right now, and then they are. So, I think maybe. Again, to what Greg said, I don't think it hurts the story in any way. Like there was no, it's one of my favorite book. Maybe a dial back. Maybe I don't even want to say that almost, So I guess I'll just stop talking there. So those are my thoughts.
Collector in the chat. What's going on, Collector P? Good to see you, sir. Okay, Alicia. Going into this with the expectation or the ongoing joke of like, there's nothing really spicy about this. There's that one chapter out of 3 books. Like, I'm not really fretting it. Did it feel excessive to you? Did it feel on par for you? Do you feel like you want this to be the new normal?
Okay. So there's a lot to unpack there. Going into it, like literally, I would say like Justin, my husband, would every time I would be reading, he would come in and he'd be like, "Ooh, you're reading your Faerie Smut? What's happening in your Faerie Smut?"
Well,
and
my wife did to me.
I would be like, "This is not smut, okay? Like, back up." And I would get so mad. And then like,
yes,
he's been playing Baldur's Gate, and I've been reading. And then I started reading this book, and I'm like getting blah blah blah, and I'm sitting on the couch next to him while he's playing Baldur's Gate, and I get to like the first like spicy scene, and I was like, "Oh, this is smut. It's cool though. I'm into it." And like, like
is this kind of like a JFK? Like, where were you when you read that?
I'm just saying that, like, I can understand. Let me put this in perspective of the story for you. The amount of smut that Nesta was reading and the amount of sex that Cassian and Nesta were having is in fact a real life parallel.
Okay.
If you are female, maybe not for you guys, but you're reading a lot of smut, it is very inspiring. And you have interests in acting upon how you're feeling post reading. So I think it could be beneficial for some relationships for smut of this level to continue. That's all I'm going to say on that. I also
No, I mean, I
think-
will say my wife's enjoyment of the TV show Normal People is a correlation. Just if you guys have, if your ladies haven't checked out Normal People yet, just throwing that out there.
So there's that. But I also think that, you know, we're having this conversation. We've been
Greg's
joking
like,
about it
my
the
wife's
whole
right over there
time.
listening.
You guys have been joking about it for like, I've been listening to the other episodes. You know, you've been having this particular conversation. Greg's been saying, just wait till book 5, just wait till book 5, right? But we talked for almost 2 hours about the book without mentioning the smut, really. Like I
Great
mentioned
point.
it a couple of times, right? But like the heart of the story is still there with this in it.
Fully,
Would the book maybe have been like 50% smaller had that not all been in there? Yes. But I do think that it's also very specific as far as it going forward. It's really specific to Cassian and Nesta. Like you hear about Cassian and like who he is before and like how he doesn't really ever have a serious relationship. And he's really just like kind of like he for a while he's like having sex with people on and off. And then he like goes a long time without really having sex with anyone. And you're just like, you know, he kind of comes across more of like the playboy of the group, whereas like Reese just longs for someone to love him. And so when he finds Farah and has like this love, he just wants to keep like showering her with the love in that way. And then you have Nesta, who's like using sex as a method to kind of like disassociate from her life. And she's like, I just want to feel something, but I don't want to feel my actual feelings. So I'm just going to like get drunk and have sex. And so the beginning, like to Justin's point, the beginning of their relationship, it's like, you know, John, you brought this up earlier too. It has this like competitive nature to it. And like they're doing it so frequently because they're trying to push each other. And I think that it plays to like who they are as a couple. Whereas like Farah and Rhysand don't have the same type of scenes because their relationship is different. And like,
Sure.
you know, I imagine the day, I could be wrong and Elaine could be like a freak, but like I imagine the day that like Elaine gets a book that her lovemaking is it's lovemaking and it's tender and it's different. You know what I mean? So I think that as far as it going forward, I am 100% here for as much Cassian and Nesta smut as Sarah would like to give me, but I don't think that it's going to apply to every character in every relationship in every situation because she understands that different people are different. And like, this is a way that they kind of like blow off steam and like one up each other, right? So much of their sexual encounters are like, I'm gonna one up, like you did this to me last time, so I'm gonna do this to you this time. And like, oh, you think we can't take it further? Like, yes, we can. That's like who they are.
Sure.
So I don't know. I'm fine with it.
But
that's
you're gonna
perfectly
have
well said.
You're gonna have different relationships right now because now Faerie and Reese Cup, they got a kid coming into the equation,
and that's going to change.
And that's going to affect, I would imagine, the extent of
story.
that love story to a degree. Not saying that it's not going to still be spicy, but it's going to affect. It's not going to be the same love story if you got a Vanessa and Cassian.
100%. No, and I think that's a great point, Alicia, as far as the functionality. And I think that both these guys hate on it as well. The idea that as Nesta's journey to recovery changes and as her journey continues through these ongoing books, I think we're going to see that evolution.
Right.
And it's nice that it is true to her character. And I was
it is. It's a lot of sex.
I looked over. I had to realize I had to unhide the message.
You are moderating my chat.
Well, I was looking at it on the other screen, and it's like this message is hidden. I was like, oh,
thank you for hiding that. Yeah, I don't have the YouTube chat open, so thank you for doing that, Greg.
I
using
also
that
like
wrench.
To your point, like that it's different. They're different characters, right? Like every other book, they're they're at war, like especially in like book 3, right? Like they're at war. They don't have like downtime. So like I can't remember which one of you
I mean,
brought it up
despite the
earlier,
fact that
but
they
like,
do seem to find a way to get it on while there's like people dying all around them at
Right,
one point,
right.
where I was like, that's
but these two are
interesting.
locked in a house. Like there's nothing else to do.
Right.
What are you
right.
gonna do for fun?
Yeah.
Read a book,
Well,
have some
always,
sex.
sweating and exercising around each other. There's a lot of that. And
Right,
that
watching each
compounds
A
other
lot of
work out.
soup is happening too. Like,
So
You
for me,
know?
I felt like this was it didn't feel excessive. It didn't feel over the top or unnecessary. It always felt true to the story or important to the story in some way or another. But I was glad that it finally earned the moniker. I felt like for the longest time it was just like an ongoing joke. They're like, oh, these are Faerie Smut books. And I was like, no, this is not. And then I was like, okay, maybe it
Good
is.
for you.
Maybe it is now. Maybe we'll qualify it.
You did it. You got there.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what that means for Throne of Glass. When are we going to get the Silver Flame version of Throne of Glass?
I don't
don't
know if
know
I
if there
want it in that
is.
series.
Yeah. It doesn't feel, I mean, as far as I'm not very far, but it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel right. Like,
No, it does feel very chaste.
So you're saying I can drive around and blast that?
just
You should
blast it.
absolutely do that.
Yes.
Other than the violence.
But you also might want to like make sure I mean, I'm only like they said, the end of book 2, but like you might want to make sure that you're like not driving on the highway so that when you're shocked by what happens, you can like not get in a car accident. You're not going to go, what did you just say?
Well, huge thank you to the three of you for joining me for another one of these, and Alicia for braving the gauntlet of beards and bourbon here tonight.
Literally an absolute honor. I'm so thankful for being here. Thank you.
Likewise.
This was a lot of fun, and for those of you that haven't read these books, obviously we're definitely big proponents of checking out the work of Sarah J. Maas, and there's a playlist full of stuff with Greg and I working our way through her works. Currently, my goal is to read the 3rd Throne of Glass book, Heir of Fire. So that's where I'm at in my journey. It's possible Greg and I will be reading together in Portland when we get together.
Yeah,
I've also given John a strict warning. I'm like, I'm not starting Heir of Glass until you start to read it because I'm tired of doing these recap shows where I'm recapping a book I read a year ago.
Yeah, that's hard.
I'm a slower reader by comparison. When I do read a book, I just plow right through it, but getting to start it is always where it takes time.
Well, and especially because Sarah J. Maas will just be like, oh, do you want to read my book? I'm going to put 4,000 things in here. And then if you wouldn't read it for like, you're like, someone's like, let's talk about this. 6 months later, you're like, I read
this book in July, so I always have to watch recap videos to remind me of what happened because I'm like, oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah. Guys,
I don't take notes.
You just gotta take notes. That's it.
5
stars.
5 stars.
When I cannot put the book down.
No, there definitely are moments where I like, or if I one of those moments.
He's listening.
I finish listening. No, but then I like go to work or whatever. Like at some point at lunch or something. Oh, I need to go back and just note a couple things. Like, and I say they're notes, but it's literally like a sentence to 3 sentences. It's not like a lot, but yeah. And then a certain amount of stars. Yeah.
Well, all the links, all the links that you want for these folks is right down below in the description of the video. So if you want to click over, subscribe, check out the things they're doing, podcasts, at creator interviews, or this guy down in the corner who you probably have never heard of him if you've just been following my channel all this time. But lots of goodness to enjoy. In fact, yes, I'll be on Justin's channel on Tuesday next week.
We're back.
And I was just on his channel on Wednesday talking Black Panther too. I feel like you can't.
And Tuesday, technically. You were on Tuesday.
Crap, yeah, Tuesday too. Yeah, man.
Derailed that show.
Too much time. But huge thanks we still got 10 people watching in the chat. I appreciate everybody hanging out with us. And I hope you try these books out. Let us know your rankings, your faves, how you feel about these, and we'll catch you all again soon for Heir of Fire when I finally get around to reading it.
Nice.
Bye, gang.
Bye.